Hi guys, Howard Croston. You join me today on the banks of a rather cold River Itchen, and I'm going to tie a few of my favourite patterns that are available from Fulham Mill. Right, so the next fly I'm going to tie is one of my micro jig Sculpins. Now these, to be honest, are one of my favourite flies to fish. It is a streamer pattern effectively, but it's a streamer pattern that you fish like a nymph. These flies, although you could catch fish with them, actually pulling them in a river like you would maybe streamer fish, for me they work best fished just like you would any kind of normal nymph. Flip them out on the end of a long Euro leader or whatever kind of nymphing system you want to use, and then just manipulate them with the rod tip. A little bit of jigging, a little bit of dead drift, and a little bit of sweeping. And they work in all colours. They're a fantastic fly at times when you've got either a little bit more water in the river, when it's running a little bit higher, or when it's dropping off the back of a flood, or when you've got fish targeting minnows and small bait fish. This particular one, I'm going to tie the natural version. It's on a size 12 Jig Force black nickel hook. I've got a 3.8mm slotted black nickel tungsten bead already set on there. The real key thing with this is the zonker strip. Now I'll be honest with you, this Fulham Mill stuff in the micro size is an absolute godsend. I used to absolutely hate tying these flies. The reason being, most of the other zonker strip material on the market, you've got to cut it down with a razor blade and a metal ruler to get it thin enough. This stuff comes in the packet at exactly the right size, and it's really taken away the chore of tying these flies for me personally. So, first thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of the zonker material. You can see how thin that is. That's the micro one. That's a really, really thin strip. With the hook in the vise, I'm going to pierce the zonker strip with the hook point. So I'm going to leave myself enough for the tail of the fly, but I'm then very carefully I'm going to pierce the hook through the skin like that. So that is right through the middle there now. So I'll take the hook out the vise briefly, and I'll thread that up onto the hook. So there we have that zonker skin now sitting on the hook. Right, now what I'll do is I'll slide that down so it's against the vise, like that. At this point, I'll wet my fingers a little bit and I'll just slick some of the fibres back to make it all a little bit more compliant. And I'll go in with my thread, tie on, run down to the bend. So, take the tag end off. Next thing, take a little bit of pearl tinsel. In this case it's Mirage tinsel, but you can use anything, any kind of pearl flash that you like. Tie that in at the back end. Nice and securely. I'm going to wind a tag of this pearl flash, and I want quite a thick tag, so I want to build it up a little bit. You could wind it over a bit of super glue if you wanted to add a little bit of extra security with it. I don't bother, in all honesty, because at the end I'm going to resin this and make it nice and durable anyway. But a little bit of tension on it where you build that tag up is quite nice. Right, now, there we go. Now the reason I put that in, or the reason I have a little bit of pearl flash somewhere on the body, is if you look at any kind of bait fish, generally speaking, they have got a white or creamy or pearlescent flashy kind of underbody. They've always got a little bit of a a lighter tone on the underside. So I like to have something on the underneath that suggests a little bit of the belly. So I'll tie that in nice and neat. No. Next thing I do is slide that micro zonker skin right up against the butt, leaving a length hanging out of the back that's going to form the tail. Now, again, put my fingers a little bit, and I split the fur from the skin at the tying point, and I tie that in on the underside of the shank, like so. Now at this point you really want to get that tying point quite tight. Just dance on the spot, get 9 or 10 good tight wraps in. I'm still using power silk or Dyneema type thread or GSP, whatever you want to call it. So I can't pull too hard. If I pull too hard, I'm just going to cut straight through the skin and ruin the fly. So put them in, then tighten them up once they've been sat there. Get that thread in front, bring it up behind the eye. Okay, now, next bit, I'm going to wind this very thin zonker strip as a hackle, and that's why it's important to have it very, very thin. So I'm going to take that and I'm basically going to palm at the front of the fly with the actual rabbit skin. So if that skin was thick or too wide, it'd be an absolute nightmare to do it. That nice thin pre-cut micro zonker makes this job a lot easier. There we go. Right up to behind the bead. Now, again, I use something with a point in just to clear my tying point. And get that thread, catch the skin in, right behind the bead. There we go. And with attention, just to start to neck it in. Now, take my scissors, cut off that tag end as neat as I can get it. And the beauty of these kind of high power silks is that what I can do is drop a turn right onto the tag end or the butt of the skin, 5, 6, 7, 8 turns there, and then pull, and it'll actually neck it right in under the bead out the way. So again, get all that out the way, tie that off. Now at this point, in all honesty, you could finish the fly if you wanted to. The actual pattern that I have available through Fulling has got an orange neck on it. Just a little bit of a trigger point. You don't really even need that if you don't want it there, but it does give a little bit of added bling to the fly and a little bit of confidence when you fish it. So just drop in some orange thread and whip finish it in behind the bead. I'm actually going to put 2 whip finishes in, just belt and braces. Not worried about building bulks. Actually, I'll drop a 3rd one in. Just a little trigger point, get the tag ends off. Now, all that is really required now is to start giving this a little bit of a haircut. So basically what we're going to do is we'll preen it a little bit first, just to see what we've got to play with. First thing I'll do is I'll turn it so I'm looking at the belly. I'll show you the belly of the fly in a minute. And when we start to trim this, think about the profile of a small baitfish or a small sculpin, whatever you're trying to really imitate. The first thing I'll do is clear what effectively will be the belly area of the fly by shaving away some of the actual fur. And when I turn this over, you'll see what I've done is I've exposed the skin of the rabbit and that little bit of a pearl butt, which is giving me the look of the belly of a small baitfish. Then what I'll do is I'll come up onto the top and I'll start to trim some shape into the overall rabbit. So little and often, don't go straight in with your scissors and start, you know, taking loads of it out, because you're just going to kill it and lose all of the volume and the movement out of the fly. I'll usually take it out the vise at this point so that I can shape this top side a little bit better. And what I'll usually do is the stuff at the front, I'll push it out the way a little bit, like that. And that's leaving me now with this slightly long tail. And what I'll do is I'll shave a little bit of that out just to take it away. I don't really need it in there, and then leave a little bit at the back end. So what it's giving me is an overall is a tapered shape, bigger at the front, smaller and skinnier at the back. And that, when it's wet, has got a lot of movement, the illusion of bulk without being a bulky heavy fly. So that means it sinks really quickly, gets down to depth. When you work it with the rod tip, it breathes, it's alive in the water. It's easy still to flip on a nymphing leader, and all round it's an absolutely killer pattern. So the final step now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of resin to the body. I would normally squeeze it on with the applicator tip, but I think it's that cold, I think it's frozen in the tube. So I'm going to take a little bit of resin out with my needle. I'm going to resin the body. A little bit more. Apologise, it is not as accurate as using the actual applicator, but in all honesty the fish don't care. There we go, a little bit of resin, and to be honest it's already set in the little bit of weak sun we've got, but I'll put a little blast with a UV torch on it as well just to finish it off. And then, for the sake of the fly time police, I shall trim any of the stragglers, because as we all know, unless it looks magazine perfect, the fish won't eat it. That's not true, incidentally. Trim that up a little bit, get rid of some of the stragglers. There we go. That's my micro jig sculpin, tied in a lot of different colours, natural, olive, black, all work well. Some of the slightly unusual colours that you could tie if you wanted to, white, yellow, they also work at times. Tan's a good colour. All round, it's a really good fly, and one of my go-to jig tight streamers, particularly when fishing on the end of a thin Euro nymph leader. That fly catches me a lot of big fish every single year. Give it a go, I'm sure it'll work for you.